I'm still depressed that this guy retired in the first place. I mean, Jesus Christ, pay the fucking guy. Welcome back to MMA Court, everybody. Today we're going to discuss the case of Alexander Volkanovski versus the Korean Zombie. This is going to be a very interesting matchup for a couple of reasons, and we're going to discuss them here today. How this came to be, what is going to happen in the fight possibly, and then what is going to happen for each one of these fighters after this fight takes place. Let's get into it. Diving into this case, the first thing that I notice is this: how the Korean Zombie got this title shot in the first place. A lot of people don't really understand how the matchmakers like to do this stuff, but I see it from both points of view. I see it from the fans, and I also see it from the matchmaker's perspective on why this fight was made. The original fight that was supposed to happen was Max Holloway versus Alexander Volkanovski Part 3. And the reason why that needed to happen was for obvious reasons. Max Holloway, after he lost his last fight to Alexander Volkanovski, a lot of people had a lot of problems with that loss. Most people thought that Alexander Volkanovski did not win. Most people, including DraftKings, believed that Max Holloway won the fight, to the point where I believe Dana White even said, if you bet on Max Holloway through DraftKings, they refunded people's money because they did not agree with the decision. That says something, because that leaves everything up in the air. Alexander Volkanovski may have won both fights on paper, but a lot of people think that Max Holloway beat him that second time. And a lot of people think that Max Holloway should be the champion right now because of this. That doesn't seem to be the case. Here's the crazy thing. Max Holloway didn't even really campaign for the third fight. Instead, he went and he fought two insane fighters, Calvin Kattar, in which it was the first ever event on ABC, which means it hit a new range of an audience. People that have never seen MMA before, people that don't even really care for it. But the fact that it was on ABC for the first time, a mainstream network that's huge, that everyone has, basic cable, a bunch of fans got to see the UFC for the first time in their life. And in the process of that, Max Holloway went out there, broke the record for the most significant strikes landed at over 445 in a single fight. And then he also broke like 7 other records in that exact same fight. Mainstream audiences got a glimpse of what fighting is. A fight that someone could compare to The Ultimate Fighter 1 when Forrest Griffin and Stephan Bonnar beat the living crap out of each other, which pulled the UFC up and made it what it is today. So then, he fights Yair Rodriguez. A lot of people think that that guy's the best striker in the UFC, but most people think he's the most flashy striker in the featherweight division. He went out there and beat him like he beats everybody. So obviously the next match needed to be Max Holloway versus Alexander Volkanovski. In the midst of Max Holloway doing all this, Alexander Volkanovski defends his belt against another killer. One of the top guys in the division is 15-2 in Brian Ortega. Well, he's 15-2 now after fighting Alexander Volkanovski. But at first, Brian Ortega was undefeated before he fought Max Holloway, and now fighting Alexander Volkanovski. So it's safe to say that these three guys are the top of the top in the division. After Alexander Volkanovski somehow figured out a way to, not breathe twice after getting caught in a guillotine and a triangle by a guy who's nicknamed T-City, somehow survived this and ended up winning the entire fight. Obviously, Max Holloway and Alexander Volkanovski had to fight again after what happened. Max Holloway falls out with an injury. So now, who is next? They decide, we're going to campaign through multiple people. I saw social media things. A lot of people thought that Henry Cejudo should have gotten a shot. And quite frankly, if it was a real thing, I would have said, yes, I am totally okay with Henry Cejudo coming back and going and fighting Alexander Volkanovski right off the bat. I'd be totally fine with that. I'm still depressed that this guy retired in the first place. I mean, Jesus Christ, pay the fucking guy. He deserves the check. Triple C, man. I don't care about the cringe. I love it. There was another guy in the mix that was campaigning for the fight also, and his name is Josh Emmett. The guy is easily one of the heaviest hitters in the division, and he's extremely underrated. After his fight with Shane Burgos, I thought that he was on his way to a title shot. That fight was so insane, he got an injury even though he won the fight, and it was an injury that I believe needed surgery. When you fall out of the limelight and you don't fight a lot of people seem to forget about you, and I think that's what happened with him. But I personally believe that he should have been the guy to get the fight, because he hasn't lost. He was on a 4-fight win streak, and his last loss was to Jeremy Stephens, which at the time, Jeremy Stephens was, really, really at the top of his game, and he was knocking people out. They decided to land on the Korean Zombie. Now, as a fan, I don't agree with it. As a matchmaker, I do agree with it. And here's why. The Korean Zombie has been in the UFC since 2011. That is absolutely insane. This guy is still at the top of the top, and he's been there for 11 years. So as a fan, I don't agree with this for a couple reasons. One, his last win was over Dan Ige. And Dan Ige, yes, has been rising up and is an unbelievable fighter, but I don't believe that should have secured him the title shot over some of the other choices. Yes, he had a good showing in his last fight. It was very, very impressive, and Dan Ige at the time was on a tear. If you rewind the clock a little bit, you'll remember that right before that fight, the Korean Zombie got outclassed on the feet against Brian Ortega, which, again, at the time, he was known as a submission guy, but then took time off and then reinvented himself and has shown unbelievable striking. So it wasn't like, oh, you got beaten on the feet by a guy who's all submissions. That's not the case. Brian Ortega on the feet is just as elite as any other guy in the division. I don't care what anyone says. And to see what he did to the Korean Zombie on the feet was one of the most impressive things he's ever done in his career, in my opinion. A BJJ black belt that could hang on the feet with someone like the Korean Zombie shows that this guy really went and learned how to strike, and he focused on it and did what he had to do to become a better overall fighter. He completely reinvented himself. So from the matchmaker's perspective, I understand why they're actually making the Korean Zombie fight and giving him a title shot. The guy's been in it for so long. Out of 17 wins, only 3 of them are decisions. The guy is a finisher, and he's a very entertaining fighter. And we haven't seen him fight Alexander Volkanovski yet. I mean, when Alexander was on his way up, he was beating everybody, but these two just never got to cross paths. So it was only a matter of time before this happened. That's why I'm not upset about it. But I would have preferred Josh Emmett. That's just my personal opinion. The rest of this case is going to be about what is after this fight. So if Alexander Volkanovski wins this fight, who does he fight next? Does he do the rematch with Max Holloway? Because you need to remember this, even though Max Holloway fell out with an injury, afterwards they booked the Korean Zombie fight and then the doctors cleared him. So then he offered to be a backup, which I thought was absolutely ridiculous. I mean, I did not want to see him fight as a backup. God forbid something happened to Korean Zombie, yeah, that would have been cool, but I don't want to see the third fight between these two guys when this dude is like almost not ready or something like that. I need the big production and stuff. I need all that stuff. I need the promotion, the build-up, the UFC countdown. I need all that stuff for a fight of this magnitude. It's not a fill-in fight. This is a trilogy of 2 of the best guys ever in that division. So if he's not going to fight Max Holloway next, the next person on the totem pole would probably be Yair Rodriguez. I don't think he should fight him. That's just my opinion. He just lost to Max Holloway. I personally didn't think it was really close. Some people think it was. I mean, he did open up Max a little bit, and then it really hasn't happened. But I don't think it was close. I don't think he deserves the next title shot. I think he's got to string together a couple of wins. You take it back even further, you got Calvin Kattar sitting right there. He just had an unbelievable performance against Giga Chikadze. The way that he beat him on the feet was something that I didn't think was going to be possible against that guy. He's an elite striker, and Calvin Kattar beat the living piss out of him. And it was very surprising because a lot of people saw Giga Chikadze to pose a lot of problems for Alexander Volkanovski. I am not one of those people. I think Alexander Volkanovski is easily one of the greatest featherweights on the planet right now, or that has ever lived. That's just my opinion. If you go down a little bit further, you get to the 6th person ranked, which is Arnold Allen. Now, Arnold Allen, I believe, is on a 9-fight win streak. He just knocked out Dan Hooker. I don't know about you, but the last time someone was on a win streak like this, they were fighting for a title shot and didn't get it, and they're known as Tony Ferguson. And then now, look where Tony is, and we didn't get to see him fight for the belt, which was pretty messed up. I don't want to see the same thing happen to Arnold Allen. This guy has a 9-fight win streak in the featherweight division. That's nuts. And he just finished Dan Hooker. I mean, that's incredible. Dan Hooker went 5 rounds with Dustin Poirier, and it was a close fight. The next fight for Alexander Volkanovski clearly has to be Arnold Allen. I think he's got enough experience. I'm totally happy with his fighting. Every performance, he puts it all out there. It's clear that this kid deserves the next shot. And if he can't do it, give it to Josh Emmett. He deserves it also. The guy has been there for so long. He's 37 years old. I think now is the time. But if the Korean Zombie wins this fight, what is going to happen with that division? Because that turns everything upside down. Who does the Korean Zombie fight after something like this? Because there's a lot of people that are right there that could get that fight right away. The first person, obviously, would be a rematch with Alexander Volkanovski, depending on how the fight goes and how he wins, or he fights Max Holloway, because both guys have never fought him. Those fights, either one of them could be the next thing. To me, there's no point in even talking about what's below that. If Zombie wins, you gotta give Volkanovski the rematch. And just say that rematch doesn't happen, you gotta give it to Max Holloway. So the verdict is in. We clearly have our answer no matter what happens in this fight. If Alexander Volkanovski wins, he has to fight Arnold Allen next. That is what this court has decided. If the Korean Zombie ends up winning this fight, I don't think that's going to happen. But if the Korean Zombie ends up winning this fight, who does he fight next? Obviously, it has to be Alexander Volkanovski or Max Holloway. That is what this court has decided, so leave me a comment in the comment section below and let me know what you think about who is going to win this fight. Let me know what is next for that fighter, and let me know what you thought of what I thought. Just let me know something. Comment for the algorithm. That's all good too. This court is now adjourned. Case is now closed.